Welcome, everybody, to the channeling series. I'm Brian Kelly, as most of you will know, sitting in for Denny this week. Denny's got a bit of an issue, and probably you all use your prayers. He's got some medical issues he's dealing with, so we all send out our best wishes for Denny. In the meantime, we're going to be channeling Goliath today, the biblical character, but we're going to focus on Goliath because of his ancestry and just the interesting nature of that whole time period. Welcome, Karl.
Hi, thanks, Brian, for sitting in and keeping the mission going. We're relentless here. We keep a steady stream of activities underway all the time. We're all multitasking, and we're all very serious about this and wanting to bring forward truth, and especially a deeper understanding of what we most need to know, because there are serious issues going on. And the more we understand who we are, why we're here, and what we're facing, the better things are going to go. And we have reason to be concerned. So we're going to be talking about this character from what some would dismiss as folklore, others see as history. So we're going right to the source, going to the soul level of this being, and get some sense of who he was, what he was a part of, and especially the connection to today.
Yes.
Because, we're not so, some of us are really keen on understanding history and the ins and outs of those times and the dynamics and the details of who did what to whom and why. And it's always an interesting slice of life. But we have real world issues now. We have lots of people alive now, and they're vulnerable to things that go wrong. So the more insight we can share about the big picture, the better off we're going to be. And so that's where I'm coming from with this. And this whole saga involving other beings from other worlds is a continuing theme all throughout history. So we can share with you right out off the bat that we've been told by Creator that the figure Goliath in the Bible was a hybrid of a human Anunnaki mating. So who are the Anunnaki? They are an extraterrestrial race of beings. They have their own planet, and they come periodically to Earth in number. And they have been here on the planet consistently with a small outpost since ancient days. They first came to Earth, I am told, over 1 million years ago, predating the modern human that we know of as ourselves, our current race and mix of races, some would see it. The racial differences are really minuscule, and we're really one race of human beings. But in any event, there was some inbreeding by these Anunnaki with humans. And the interesting thing about it is that the outstanding characteristic you can expect with such a pairing is you're going to get one large baby and one large adult offspring, because the Anunnaki, the pure blood Anunnaki, were and are 12 to 15 feet high. So they're double to a little more than double the height of a human being, and the other bodily features proportional to that.
That's taller than most people's ceilings in their home.
Yes. Yes.
In fact, you almost need a cathedral ceiling to have one of these guys walk in,
Right. By that's almost a factor of 2, because, 8 feet, we're talking 15 feet maybe. So right. That's just 1 foot shy of a double height.
Yeah, exactly. If the average male in this country is probably 6 feet tall, double that is a short Anunnaki.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So there are some large beings in the world who are a first generation hybrid that might be tallish and maybe extremely tall in that end of the spectrum, but not unheard of. So we're talking, like 7-footers, that sort of thing, because there is a kind of dilution effect of the genetic complement. So one of the things that falls off quickly is the extreme height in offspring. There have been matings through history of human and Anunnaki, and there's a bloodline that persists. And so we want to get more insight about this bloodline, because it's not a minor thing.
Right. Yes.
What we've been told is that the perception by many, through recent history at least, that there's a hidden cabal that runs the world, a secret government, a sinister group of secret organizations, the Illuminati, and so forth. These are the Anunnaki bloodline. And there's some people who know there's an extraterrestrial bloodline and assume it's the reptilians, because there is another reptilian extraterrestrial involved with the Anunnaki in an alliance, and they're bad guys as well, and they're nasty beings, and they are reptilian shapeshifters, and there's a whole history there. But the bloodline we speak of isn't human reptilian. They do not mate with humans ordinarily. They disdain humans more than the Anunnaki, which is saying something. And so it is the Anunnaki who've gone down that path and created this bloodline. But it served them because they act as the intermediaries. And they can carry out Anunnaki plans and wishes and pass as humans. You can imagine this, if you're a 12, 15-foot tall being, you can't sort of intermix, and stop off at Wells Fargo and shift some money around, or go into the halls of Congress and, pass a message to someone you want to do something in legislation and so on. But the hybrids can't. And I had actually had an encounter with a first generation Anunnaki human hybrid a few years ago, and didn't appreciate at the time that that's what it was. But I saw this guy at a gathering, and it was talking about the Gnostic Gospels of all things. But this being was huge. He was huge. He looked like he might be 7.5 feet tall. Big guy, large stature, curly hair that was kind of reddish brown, and very striking features. Kind of swarthy, dark complected. And he was dressed as a priest, which I think is a wonderful kind of disguise. This
Sure.
is in the Godfather series, where the assassin comes dressed as a priest, and everyone gives him a pass because he looks innocent. But anyway, I found out through my channeling later on why this figure struck me so, and I couldn't get that out of my mind. Encountering it, it made my hair stand on end, literally, looking at this being. And now I know that was an intuitive awareness that you got an Anunnaki presence. So this is something that goes on all the time. And the more we learn about it, I think the better we're going to be.
Yes, I think so. Well, you want to get started, Karl?
We certainly can. We've got questions lined up. Brian is very historically oriented and always has things he's curious about and wants to probe. And so we're indulging that today. And I think this will be an interesting outing. I'm curious as well. This is an aspect of the Anunnaki influence we haven't talked much about.
Right.
But they are the interface for the Extraterrestrial Alliance. So the more we learn about their doings, and not that we're going to try and get all their secrets and all that sort of thing. We always are mindful of security concerns, for one thing. And the other thing is, there's not much we can do about it anyway. It's not like you can call the cops. You can't call the authorities to do something about it, because they own the authorities. They are the authorities.
Our whole mission is to encourage people to heal and pray. And that's what this webinar is about. We're attempting to bring information to ultimately persuade you that the answer is healing and prayer. Seems a little bit of a stretch to, explore the intricacies of hybrids, from the ancient past. But, it impinges on history today. And a lot of what we take as popular culture arose from times past. And if we can go back and kind of disassemble what's happened in the past, we can see where the narrative maybe took off in a direction that took us away from our own true heritage, which is divine.
Yeah. And the other thing I would point out is that the culture that was created along the way here seems ancient by our standards, because we're a short-lived species. These are much longer-lived species. So their presence, their influence, their control is a constant. They've been at this a long, 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 long time. This didn't just start. It's not something new. It's been here all through history. And what they do is play with us and make us fight with one another and launch wars and so on, because it's entertainment for them.
Yeah.
It's like, when we make up a screenplay about something and we hire actors to pretend to do this or that, and it can be modeled on the real world in some way, like the scale of a war or something. And so we kind of replay that as entertainment and a learning enterprise and cultural sharing and all of that. But those things that have happened that are larger than life, they created largely by manipulating us. So they create dramas in reality, in the real world, by getting humans to run around like idiots and do stuff to inflame one another.
I mean, the way I could compare it, the closest that some, especially young people, can relate to is fantasy games, where and I did this when I was back in college, years and years ago. You fill a basement with a bunch of folding tables, and you get mostly it's guys, girls, women participate in this as well, but it's mostly a guy thing, to sit around a big table and do Dungeons and Dragons, or I don't even know what all the games are these days. But there's a ton of them, and they can get very in-depth. These games can go on for weeks and weeks and weeks. They can have, dozens, if not hundreds, of subplots. It can get very detailed to follow these narratives. And it's all for fun. I mean, there's nothing concrete that comes out of this except a bunch of guys sat around and had a good time and drank beer, more often than not.
Yeah.
Well, on a grand scale, from what we're seen to be getting, they're doing that with us. We're the game pieces. And this is just a big game for them, basically sitting around their equivalent of a table, drinking what they ever have as beer, and hooting and hollering and having fun, at our expense. The difference is that in a fantasy game, there's no game pieces that are living, breathing creatures. That's different from this perspective.
Well, and the reason that can happen, sorry to burst bubbles, but these extraterrestrials, the physical ETs that are here, that visit us and manipulate us, are all part of a group of such beings. And they are all corrupted, and they are all evil. And they are very limited in their moral capability. They are loveless beings at this point. Their level of depravity has grown through the many, many centuries, through corruption by the dark angel fallen ones. They're corrupting us too, these dark angelic beings. But it started many thousands of years before humanity existed in those other worlds. So those other extraterrestrials came here lowered in their function and ability to love. And their technology is fantastic and impressive.
Oh, yeah.
It shows you that technology is not the same thing as advancing with enlightenment. So that's what we're contending with.
And people should be seeing that now. I mean, cell phones are really almost miraculous technology, but have they made us better people? Are we nicer and kinder to each other as a result of having this technology? I think most people would say no. So technology by itself is not going to make you more noble. It's not going to make you kinder and gentler and more loving. Yeah. We can see that with our own technology. Just extrapolate that out to a bigger scale. Why would it be any different?
Yeah. So the last thing I wanted to point out in preamble is that the beings we're talking about, these extraterrestrials and humans, are all soul-based creations. Mm-hmm. We all have souls, and we all go to the light when we pass on, however that takes place. Some people get waylaid on the way, and that's another story. But these are divine creations like us. They had tremendous potential at one time. Mm-hmm. That is narrowing and slipping away through their choices.
Right.
So it's a cautionary tale for us not to go down that path. We've been conditioned and frankly brainwashed to believe any extraterrestrial race that's more advanced than us would be better. They would have evolved beyond the need for war and these kinds of narrow, selfish views that humans hold all too often. And really, the opposite is the case. We have been corrupted by them and their ideas to set up hierarchies with leaders and kings and queens and subjugating the weaker among us. And that's following their role model, not what we would do on our own as divine humans, more recently created to be spiritual, uplifted beings. So going back to the light, the soul persists. We're going to the soul level of this being to talk with it, and it will know all about what it was doing as a soul extension down here on the planet back in those times of Goliath. And he may have incarnated. Again, we're going to ask that along the way.
Right.
And maybe incarnated now, for all we know. But
they have
the
access
soul we can still talk to.
Yes. And they have access to today's information as well.
Yes.
They can speak to today's issues in context. And that's one of the reasons why this is such a valuable exercise.
The only people who don't know what's going on is us.
Yeah, quite literally.
Humans are literally in the dark. They're clueless. They're ignorant. They're dumbed down, dimmed down, suppressed, made to be complacent through manipulation. Meanwhile, in the light, all of our forebears, all our former relatives and friends, our soul family up there, they watch everything that goes on and see it perfectly. Mm-hmm. And they're amazed at all this ET stuff going on all day long.
Right.
And the extraterrestrials are in their heaven as well.
Yep.
And watching this. So it's only when they go back to the light that they can have a higher perspective. If they come back and incarnate, they're back in their culture, right, not connecting to what happened before and seeing that things can be better. But we want to raise them up. We want to heal them.
Yes. It's a culture that has scrubbed itself out of divine references. There's no religion that references a divine being. There's no literature. There's no way that an individual in these societies can even research or investigate the possibility. So yeah, it's pretty stark.
They're atheists.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. At least that's what we've been told. All right, so we get started.
All right, so I'm going to go into the state of consciousness I need to make this connection. I go to Creator of all that is to ask to be connected to the consciousness of the subject of interest. And I do that to put safety and security around the work. Most channelers do not operate that way. They just go out with their consciousness and say hello. They call something forth, but anything that answers, they may connect with and start a dialogue. And it's usually an imposter. Most channelers aren't really ready to go to the highest realms when they start out. But the lower level beings, like extraterrestrial psychics, are there and ready to jump in and do a handshake and start a friendship. And they'll pretend to be an archangel or whomever the person is seeking. And that forms an alliance that just continues. And they'll play along. These extraterrestrials know all about our culture, all about our religious beliefs, our history, everything. So they can quote chapter and verse. They can dictate many, and they have dictated many spiritual books that are lofty in tone. But ultimately, they fall short of giving you information on how to solve problems. They're all about encouragement, upliftment, saying how to be wonderful and how things are wonderful and how you can be wonderful and so on in a very general way. Mm-hmm. You know, be good, be wise, be helpful, and all those sort of common sense wisdoms.
Not bad advice, but
not bad advice. And that's what's deceptive about it.
Right.
You know, if they were menacing or threatening, you know, the jig would be up. You would know this isn't real. It's not trustable, or at least. So, all right. So it'll just take me a moment, and then hopefully we'll have Goliath on the line, and you can talk with him, Brian, and we'll see what develops. Okay.
Okay. Very good, Karl. Thanks.
All right. This is Goliath speaking.
Welcome, and thank you for coming to share with us today. How much of the biblical narrative about David and Goliath is accurate?
First of all, we are quite pleased to be here. There is no reason to fear anything. For you or anyone hearing our words, we are spiritual beings in essence and divine creations, as you have heard. And when we are with Creator, we are our true selves, but do not see this or appreciate it while in physical form. Much like your atheists of today, your non-believers, your doubters dismiss increasingly religion as valuable and worthy of attention and practice. So I wish to support your efforts to bring light to bear on all that is going on, and I'm happy to describe my part in this. And although unsavory, needs to be shared as an object lesson. So I can tell you, first of all, the most important thing we want everyone to know is that the biblical encounter described did take place. I was there as a soul extension, which is what you are. Those in the physical as human beings are only a small portion of your larger self, your larger existence as a soul vast in reach in comparison to you in human form. This is nothing to be intimidated by. This is simply the way of things. Human existence is a training ground, a proving ground, a testing ground. And you are here for many reasons, but only a portion of the soul for learning and growth. And the problems that happen then need attention and further reworking. And this is the ongoing enterprise of life itself, always leading to new possibility and further expansion. When people make poor choices This delays things because it causes harm. The story of Goliath, as described in the Bible, is a story of wrongdoing of major proportions. The clash of cultures, aided and abetted by the extraterrestrial presence on the part of the Philistines and the Israelites of the day, who were more aligned with Creator's desire for peace, harmony, and spiritual enlightenment. The contest of wills going on between human and extraterrestrials is a lesson and a contest about spirituality versus the void generated by its absence. As you know, in nature, something will fill a void always. And when spirituality declines, there is a need for something that satisfies and also accomplishes something needed. More frequently than not, it is turning to power and control. And then things worsen. You can live lives of harmony and peaceful coexistence and a joyous sharing in all the bounty that is present on the earth in abundance when you are careful stewards of the planet. There is no need for death and killing in a gentle, loving world. In my day as Goliath, this was ignored and abused mightily. And I was a deliberate and willing spokesperson for the darkness of the extraterrestrial influence, which is cultural hierarchy to the nth degree, to put power on a pedestal and make it the centerpiece and the most important criterion and the most valued, the most praised, to the point of worship. The mightiest hand, the most powerful figure reigning over all. As a hybrid being, which I was, I had access to superior knowledge. I was play acting in that role as mighty warrior, as a kind of entertainment, because I was blind to the damage I might cause. To the person who is out of alignment, the degree of distortion can become a pursuit of its own, and faulty thinking exalted beyond reason. That was what was taking place. So as that twisted, depraved leader in collaboration with interlopers, with designs on humanity and your planet itself, I was the enemy, and they were traitors to the human race. This needed a comeuppance, a checkpoint, a counterposing force to burst the bubble and present an iconic confrontation between the forces for good and the forces of evil. This is why the event took place, where I died at the hands of a mere human, as I thought of it, and with a primitive weapon as well. In spite of my great physical strength, stature, and heavy armaments as described in the Bible, I did have a point of vulnerability, and that was my undoing. The point of the confrontation from the divine perspective was truly the exhibition of courage in the face of great and grave threat to survival. That is the reason the story of the encounter and the successful slaying of Goliath by the mere human has stood for all time in the hearts and minds and fascination of humans hearing it told again and again and again and again. It is seen as allegory, as a metaphorical fairy tale, perhaps, representing perseverance and the triumph of courage against great odds. That plot line has been exploited many, many times in many ways, many other settings. But that is the overlap here. It is not only triumph of the small against the mighty who would subjugate them or even destroy them. It is not only the triumph of good over evil. It is not only the triumph of those in spiritual alignment over those who would challenge the very existence and standing of the Almighty. It is a story of human versus extraterrestrial interloper. And that reality is what we see as the greatest lesson of the Bible account of the contest. It matters less the other details. And this is the reason the story has lived and prevailed in human consciousness with such force. It is because it is underwritten by the Almighty. It is sanctified, it is validated, and it is further emphasized within the hearts and minds of all who hear it. Every time the story is told or someone reads the biblical accounts, God is there to pat them on the back for paying attention, for viewing what took place, thinking about what the words might mean, and giving the reader encouragement to take away the big lessons. This is one greatly underappreciated dynamic of holy writings, the scriptures of all the great religions. They are not only a historical record, accurate or not, as one can question many details in all the writings as to their absolute precision in recording exactly what took place. It is the fact they are a living, breathing interface and connection between human and their creator. It is one way Creator speaks to you, through the writings of the prophets and those who had the gift of intuition to know truth and to record it for all time as best they could. So even with the overlay of heavy editing and deletion of many scriptures altogether, many truths persist. And the link that these works provide between human and their creator will stand for all of time.
Thank you. Can you tell us, can you describe your parents, the circumstances of your conception, whether your birth was natural or required a cesarean section, for instance, and whether you were raised by one or both parents?